Okay, we are live. So, welcome everyone. Happy May 1st, and welcome to the Elevate Academy. We are a place for student athletes, their families, coaches, anyone who loves sports to get together and elevate each other. We bring you some of the best coaches, the best athletes, business executives, influencers, leaders. We bring them all to you to help you to be the best that you can do in everything you do. And our goal is to focus on the complete person, the mind, body, game, and life. So buckle up, put your chin strap on, and welcome to the show, Digit Murphy. Hello, Digit.
Yeah, baby. Happy May Day. Buckle up. I like it.
I like it. I see you got the Toronto skyline behind you there.
Yeah.
And
I'm in Toronto. It's at night.
let
Just
let
kidding.
me bring everyone up to speed. For those of you who might not know Digit, Digit was named the president of the newest NWHL, the National Women's Hockey League franchise for Toronto, and it's the first Canadian franchise, correct?
This league. Now, there was another league, but this is the first one in the National Women's Hockey League.
That's awesome. And prior to this, Digit was the head coach for the Boston Blades. She was also the head coach for the Kunlun Red Star, which is in China, which is part of the Canadian Women's Hockey League. Prior to joining the Blades, she was the head coach for the Brown Bears, Brown University. That's where I had to make sure I was sporting my Brown stuff today.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, baby.
She was the head coach there. When she left Brown, she was literally one of the number one coach in Division I in wins. And she'd finished her career coaching in the college with 318 wins. So once again, Digit, great to have you on the show.
I'm so happy to be here, Dave, and I like the Brown roots. You'll be interested to know that Haley Moore, one of our Brown gals who played for me, is now also the president of the Boston Pride. So there's a lot of Bruno roots in the NWHL. So it's pretty cool. And, you yourself, of course, big stud at Brown. So happy to be.
Let's talk about the NWHL a little bit. Give the viewers a little bit of an overview of the league and what you're trying to do. And are you trying to mirror other leagues? Because one of the things that we need to do is we need to make sure all three of my girls played hockey growing up. So we need to have an outlet for these young female hockey players who want to aspire to Olympics and professional and things like that. So tell us.
Yeah. So when you look at the history of women's sports, specifically hockey, you're seeing it go through several iterations. It's a very young kind of sport when you think about men's sports. So since 1998, that's when the women won the Olympic gold medal. Okay, so it's that young, right? So you're talking, that's 30 years, right? If you do the math right, 98, 2008, yeah, right? So when you look at how young we are as sports, we're going through lots of iterations. What the NWHL is, it's a hockey league that started about 5 years ago. We're going into our 6th season. And previously, the model that we were using was the Canadian model, which was the one that, I had coached in after Brown. And they're league-owned models. Okay, this is the difference between men's sports and women's sports and where we're at right now. The NWHL now has created a different model in that there are franchise owners as part of the league. And Boston is a franchise owned, and now Toronto is. So we've kind of went from this league-centric model. Now we're branching out into the franchise model. So it's pretty exciting from that perspective. Now, previous to this model, there was the Canadian Hockey League, and that was in existence for 12 years, okay? It was league owned and operated, and it never really elevated, to use your word, to the point that, perhaps we could have gone. And I personally believe it's because it was the legal model that wasn't executed with the local franchise, the local community in mind. So it was my pleasure to come on to this NWHL franchise owned model for 2 reasons. Number one, you've got a really motivated ownership group that wants to create that sustainable model that you talked about for your daughters. Leaders, heroes in the community of Toronto, of Boston, showing off their stuff. The second reason, though, is because the ownership model is female. Joanna Boynton, who is a Harvard grad, is the owner, one of the owners, and Ty Taminia, who is the chairman of our board, has run 6 minor league professional baseball organizations. She's been an owner in that. So when you look at that female-led ownership group, and then I was so fortunate to be hired as one of the leaders as well. Now you're starting to create the model that I see for women's future in professional sports. It's not just, well, let's have the WNBA be owned by the NBA. Let's just have the NHL own the WNHL. Because to me, it's time that as women leaders, we need to buck up. We need to put the money down. We need to invest in other women. And we need to own the sports space. So, this is some of the history and the iterations in women's sports. So
Well,
thanks for asking.
I've had some unbelievable coaches on the show, and one of the topics that one of the coaches brought up is that we need to get more women who want to come back to the sport. And one of the coaches was saying, when my women are done playing, that's it, they're done, and then they almost kind of leave the sport. Where on the male side, you have not only a lot of them continue playing. I'm still playing at 52. I'm playing in lacrosse. Want to say to all my Magic Wands and Brown State folks out there, we won Lake Placid 3 times in a row, and we just won the national championship down in Florida. So, but we're still playing and stuff like that. How do you keep the women more involved, and how do you create the fan base?
Yeah, that's a 2-part question. Let's unpack it. So first is, how do you keep the women involved? I think you need to make it easier for them to be involved, because as well as I do, and I don't want to get into gender roles or stereotypes, but you do know that the women between the ages of like 20 and 40 having the kids, right? So, as someone that went through that myself, it's really difficult to do everything that you have to do to be a mother, a partner, spouse, and then have a job and then still do the sports thing. So I think if there's a way to ease women into that role, whether it be like, look, we want you there once a week, we're going to also pay you, because traditionally women have made less in the workforce. So the last thing they want to do on their day off is go be a coach, right? Guys naturally gravitate toward the sports because they love doing it. So what's happened as a byproduct of that, unfortunately, is we've kind of forced ourselves into those roles for the most part. And I'm seeing it change a little bit, but the men go take the kids to the sports, the women go out and do the other things that they have to do. So I think we have to flip that a little bit, have conversations about that more, because if you look at it from the perspective that women are really helping by seeing it and being it in the coaching world for their daughters, then maybe more women would do it. So we have to change the conversation about why it's important to be those coaches. So, and also, if women haven't coached before, they kind of look at it like, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I want to be in charge. And guys naturally just like grab it and they just do it. It's just the way we're socialized. It's the way the whole system has been built. So if we can just change that conversation, make it more easy for women to kind of figure out how to do the coaching thing. And I would actually challenge anyone that women can't coach, because here's why. As a mom, if you have a birthday party, if you have things that you have to organize like off the field, you're a natural coach, right? You're a natural teacher, you're a natural nurturer. And especially at the young ages, but even beyond, I would contend that women are actually better coaches than men, because they help kids assimilate. They have these really intuitive skills about how people feel. And I think that if we can embrace those concepts into why women should coach, I think you're going to see more women coach, even if they haven't even picked up a lacrosse stick. You can learn the game, but you can't learn the concepts of coaching and teaching. And I think women are natural for that.
What's really interesting is, we saw obviously this year with the Super Bowl, and you saw Katie as one of the coaches with the San Francisco 49ers, which I got to be honest, I was looking for that to be a much bigger deal during the Super Bowl. And I kind of wish they had made that into a bigger deal. I mean, just the fact that she's actually coaching in the NFL is incredible, but we're starting to see it. Brown, my alma mater, the new quarterbacks coach at Brown is a woman, which is,
Woo-hoo.
yeah, I mean, and, at the time, when you were at the end of your career at Brown, I know there were people that were talking about, hey, should we make Digit Murphy the coach of the men's team when the men's team was slumping?
I applied. They didn't pick me. I was a finalist. So Brown was on the right track. It's too bad they didn't do that either. They would have made history. They would have been ahead of the curve, but it's okay. I'm
Yeah.
glad that football did it.
But it's interesting. When I was, my other, I love sports in general, and I've been involved, played everything, played 3 sports at Brown, and I played intramural ice hockey at Brown as well with our fraternity league,
Right.
and loved it, and still played men's hockey after college, and it's fun. But I had the opportunity to consult and work with the New York Islanders, and in working with the Islanders, I had the chance to get to meet and work alongside of Angela Ruggiero, and
Awesome.
Olympic stud, Harvard, and I would tell you flat out, on the Islanders front office team, she was the best player.
Absolutely. She's unbelievable. Have you, so she's doing actually some really cool stuff in the sports space. You should look her up. But, she was a real pioneer and leader. And, we're going to need more women like that to step up to the plate. And, I always talk to people about why I've been successful in this space. And I think it's because, I don't see gender, right? I just see, what the job is. And I think we need to kind of talk about that more when we mentor women, when they come into the job as thoughtful leaders, male or female, we have to remind women, unfortunately, still that they should be confident in what they say and how they say it. I think as a gender, sometimes we always ask for forgiveness, not permission. I mean, I ask for forgiveness, not
Permission instead of forgiveness.
Women, are always asking for permission. And I think, it's not that you want to be a cowboy and bang a door down, but at the end of the day, you're confident in what you say as a female and how you say it, and not have to, like, they even say, like, women apply for jobs, like they have to have like 95% of the boxes checked, to apply for a job. And a guy's like, oh, I can write my name on the resume. Good, I'm in, So I think it's about teaching women, empowering them more, educating them more. And just, having me on your show, actually, a guy's show, having a woman, like all these pictures of like people like yourself that are progressive are really elevating that conversation to help women. So, thank you for having me, because I think just this is something that needs to be done.
Yeah, well, we have some amazing women guests coming up. We have Franny Schuler is coming up soon. She is the CEO of InShape, the gym. It's a monster national gym. She's the CEO. She's coming on the show. We have Liz Robichaud, who's the executive director, former head coach at BU.
I remember her.
Yep. Liz is coming on. She's the executive director of the IWCLA, the Women's College Coaches Association. She's coming on Monday. We have Janine Tucker, head coach of Johns Hopkins, coming on. So we literally have some amazing guests in the loop. Susie Petroselli, she's going to come on. She's a Harvard soccer player. She's going to be promoting her book. She's also one of the executive producers of Warriors of a Beautiful Game, which is a documentary that Netflix picked up. And Susie helped me get Kelly Nascimento DeLuca, who is Pele's daughter. She was one of our first guests on the show. So, we have been bringing some really powerful women on here. And I think one of the things that's really important is to be able to show, I run a club that is only girls. I don't have a boys program. And, I coach high school girls. I have 3 daughters. There's a reason why God put me here. And so it's super important to have people like you on, who people can look up to and say, wow, that's someone I want to emulate. That's someone who I can get advice from. That's someone who's a potential mentor.
Right. The thing that just resonated with me about going back to that question about the league and the structure of it, right? Yes. So I want you to think about a world where women own the sports space like men own the NHL, like we can own the W and NWHL, where now all the people in our space, the GMs, the coaches, they're all female. And it's not that we need to do that, but because we can't be, there's only one, you mentioned Katie in the Super Bowl, right? that's one of how many teams, right?
Yeah,
So
exactly.
think about it, the opposite model, where if you own your space, most of the people in women's sports could be the leaders, the GMs, the coaches, the presidents. So I think that when people look at the sports world, they do look at it from a male gender lens, and that's okay because that's where we were. But if you can kind of look at the vision of where we're going and why, I think it will open people's eyes about why women supporting their own teams, leagues, et cetera, whether it be financially, from a leadership perspective, from a volunteer perspective, that it can be that way. And it also does not have to look 100% like the male model. So
Right.
I think,
Well, you know what,
people
you
need
know
to
what's
start
great?
to get creative.
I don't know if you listen to them or not, but I listen to a lot of podcasts. I walk every morning, and I usually,
Mhm.
try to crank out about 6 miles every morning, sometimes more. And, it's a solid time for me to listen to great podcasts. I listen to three of the podcasts I listen to are the Rise podcast by Rachel
Mhm.
Hollis. She
Okay.
wrote the book, A Girl, Go Wash Your Face, which is a New York Times bestseller, unbelievable. Jennifer Allwood and Jenna Kutcher. The three of them are really super powerful women. And I would encourage, any girl or any woman out there, listen to those three podcasts. I might be one of the only few guys who listens to them.
Yeah.
And
And
I look
don't
at the,
forget about the Digit Murphy podcast, The Grit. You got to start listening to that.
well, you got to promote it right now. Tell us about it.
Hey, it's something that we started back in August, and basically we just bring women leaders. We have conversations. I've had people on from mostly hockey players that I know, coaches that I know, and it's really just a conversation about grit and going through adversity. Because I don't know if you remember, but when I was at Brown, we used to always call it adversity training. You need to be sprinting and, practically almost throwing up. I mean, granted, it was a little crazy back in the 2000s, but it was really about being tough and all the lessons that you learned through sport. So we
Yeah.
talk about the journeys of a lot of athletes on the podcast. And the most recent one is I have my producer interview me about
Wait, you broke up. You got to stop
Toronto.
for a second there.
The
You got to repeat yourself. You got to repeat yourself because you got frozen for a second.
Oh, where did you
Your
hear me?
producer, you had your producer interview you.
Oh, so we had the producer interview me on the last Grit podcast, the Grit Live, Digit Murphy. It's on Apple, and we talked about my journey into the presidential role of the Toronto franchise. So it's basically just conversations with strong women and how they got to where they are. So it's kind of cool. You should have
I
your
love it.
daughter. I'll interview your daughter.
Yeah. I
She's
mean,
got a dad like you. She's got a dad. We've had a lot of adversity to talk about. Just kidding.
yeah, well, I got to tell you, you know what? I'm gonna talk about my daughters because they're all great kids. But my oldest daughter, Victoria, she is trying to really make her way right now. She's been battling Lyme disease. She's got a very bad case of it, and she's been out of work for probably 7 months, and she's literally taking it head on right now by going out there and going to the community and talking out. She just had a post today that as a dad want to make you cry, but also want to make you proud that, here she is fighting this fight. And she is a strong kid. And all three of my girls are strong, powerful young women. So I'm very proud of them.
Oh, awesome. Well, we'd love to have any of them on the show that want. And I've actually had, I think I had a high school senior on the show. Like, it's about all ages and all women. So,
Yeah.
whatever
Well,
we
you'd
can
like
do
to have
to
Kate
promote
too.
that.
Kate is a coach at UNC now, coaching lacrosse at UNC. And so she's
Congrats.
coaching there as a volunteer assistant. And then, and Allie is at Stony Brook and she wants to be an attorney and she's just killing it in the classroom. So all
Good for
three of them,
her. Good for her.
pretty proud of them. Let's talk about your roots though. You
Ah,
went to Cornell.
mhm.
Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Cranston, Rhode Island. Right now, I just kid that this is my background, but I'm in Rhode Island right now. I live in Providence. I live right around the corner from Brown. Grew up really right in the birth of Title IX, right? I mean, started
You
playing in
didn't go to Brown
1970.
and you went to Cornell instead of Brown?
The rub is that Brown didn't recruit me. I was one of the first recruited ice hockey players at Cornell. Brown was a little behind the curve back then. And if you remember, the Pandas were pretty much last place team when I took them over. We went from worst to first in 4 years. So, Brown really was more of a program that just the kids that came, and Cornell went out and recruited. So I really was on the track to go to UNH or Providence or Northeastern on the scholarship track, and Cornell came in the back door, and one of my friend's brothers, who was a hockey player at Yale, said, "Didge, if you don't take an Ivy League degree, you're crazy." So I ended up pulling out the Ivy League degree, played all 4 years there, ended up scoring a lot of goals.
Two-time captain, Ivy League Player of the Year in 1981.
Yeah,
So let's come on. You gotta pat yourself on the back.
It's a long time ago, and the older I get, I guess the more humble or the better I get. I don't even know what to say, but it was a long time ago, and I was fortunate enough to have that opportunity because I was a first generation college. My dad didn't even go to graduate from high school, so sports really is the reason why I'm where I am today, and which is why what I do right now is grow opportunities through sports for women, because without sports, I wouldn't have had I wouldn't be coaching. I wouldn't be leading, the Toronto organization right now. So I have a lot to thank sports for, which is why it's kind of my mission and my message. But
that's what the Elevate Academy is about, and that's what you're here. You know what? It's taking. I look at it and go, I've been playing sports since I was a kid, and I played my first lacrosse game in 7th grade. I wasn't one of these kids who had it in 3rd grade, and it wasn't until 7th grade. I played everything. I played baseball. I played basketball. I wrestled. I played hockey for 1 year and then grew out of my equipment. And Mom said, "Sorry, we can't afford equipment another year. So your hockey career is done." But I played golf as a kid. I played soccer. I played everything. And I'm writing a book right now that basically it says, the title of the book is Sports Saved My Life. And it's created a tremendous amount of opportunities for me. And it's all the things that you do learn. And that's what we want to do with the Elevate Academy, is to be able to take these lessons, from people like you, the trailblazers, and bring them to our student athletes, their families, other coaches, business leaders, because they can all learn from this stuff.
Well, I mean, it's really just using sports as a platform to educate, which, I think that we've lost our way in sport. We think it's all about the winning, and it's all about the scholarships, and it's all about, whether you're playing the NHL or the NFL. And it's really not about that. It's how do you take the lessons that you learn in sport and translate them into life? So, I think the more Elevate Academies that we have out there, and the more people that follow that trend, we're going to have a better society, and we're going to have a better world.
Agreed. So, as a young woman growing up in Cranston, Rhode Island, I'm going to guess that you were playing with mainly boys when you were growing up playing hockey.
All boys. And it wasn't even just that. It was fighting my way onto the fields because, you're talking 1972. Like, girls were not even supposed to, wear pants. Like when I first started going to first grade, I had to wear a dress. Like that crushed my world. Like, that's how I knew I was a girl. I'm like, wait, what? I have to wear a dress, to school. And, it was really heartbreaking for me to not be who I was, which was the rough and tumble, play with balls and, throw baseball with my brother. And like, now I go to school and the schoolyard's separated by a playground, like fence, and you can't even play, you're playing hopscotch, and I'm like, want to play basketball or, whatever is on the other side of the fence that the boys are playing. So, that was my introduction into the real world. And, going out to the field and trying to be in the sandlot and playing every day on the baseball field and being the captain of the team. And then to not be able to wear the uniform because I was a female was a real slap in the face again, and I'm like, wait, what? This isn't fair. So I think, the roots of my passion and my kind of gender lens of sport were born on those actual baseball fields back then. And then it transitioned over to hockey because, we had to play something else in the winter. The pond. My dad was a Bruins fan. My mom was a Bruins fan. We used to watch the Bruins TV 38. It was funny. I was on a podcast yesterday reminiscing with the rabbit ears because you couldn't really see the hockey players because there was snow. Like no one knows these things because everyone's grown up with cable TV. Like, we still had the antennas, and it was we loved it. Like, we would watch. We couldn't even see the puck, but we were watching.
I don't know what rabbit ears are.
Yeah, it was just like the antenna. Like, there was no television. So anyway, I was very passionate as a young girl growing up, and then I was lucky enough to be picked up almost on an all-girls hockey team. My friend's mom actually started a hockey team because she had two brothers, and her dad was actually the president of Rhode Island Amateur Hockey. And his wife was like, well, what about your daughter? He's like, what about it? She's like, well, she needs a team. So that's how it all happened. And thank God for Jackie Bogosian, because if Jackie Bogosian doesn't exist, and I actually told this story, I was inducted to the Hall of Fame last August or something like that for Rhode Island. And I made it all about the story of the women that came before me that made me who I am, which, to your point, you know, with Jackie Bogosian, without her, Digit Murphy doesn't even have the idea that she could be a hockey player, never mind a coach or anything. So the people that come before you are really important. So anyway, so she started the hockey league, and then the rest is history.
What's kind of cool is, so in my household growing up, my great aunt and my grandmother moved in with us when I was young. And my great aunt Mitzi, one of the greatest people ever, she was one of the women from the movie A League of Their Own. She was a professional baseball player.
Wow.
And, you know, talk about wearing pants and stuff like that. I don't think I ever saw her in a dress ever. She always wore pants, and she always wanted to have a catch in the backyard, and smoking cigarettes, and, you know, that's who she was. And what an influence she had on my life. You know, and the funny thing is, I wish I had more of that opportunity to learn more about that and talk. But she would have her friends over, friends who all would literally travel around the country to play women's baseball. And she pitched against her brother at one point. So,
but that had an impact on you, and it was subliminal. Like, you don't even know it. Like, that's probably one of the reasons why you are who you are right now. And these are the kind of images, more images that we need for our girls and women and our boys. I'm telling you, it's the boys pick up on it as well. I remember running practices, lacrosse practices preseason for my son. He was I went to private school, and they didn't have anyone to run the practices, like the off-season training. And I just took them for a couple of weeks, like 2 or 3 times a week, and I was just kicking their butts, and they loved it. It doesn't matter, male or female. They just want to be helped and led and learn. And I think we need to take a gender lens off sports. And once we do that, I think sports is going to succeed astronomically, even more than it is now.
I love that too. But, you know, the fact is, I'm always using other sports too, because I was never really a basketball player. I only played 1 year of basketball. I played a lot of basketball growing up, pickup, but I only played 1 year of basketball organized. And then my coach grabbed me and said, "You're a wrestler. You're not a basketball player. So you're now a wrestler." And, but what's funny is I try to use so many other sports. And, you know, right before the whole COVID-19 thing happened, we were at an indoor facility where they have a hockey rink. And I went to go see one of my friend's sons practicing, and I'm watching the drill that they're doing. I'm like, I love that drill. I'm gonna go do it right now. And I used that exact drill, wrote it down on my phone, and did that drill right now practice.
I agree. And I remember, actually, it's funny you mention it, being with my son's like practices for high school, or for even like a 12-year-old boys practice. I would go, oh, wait a minute. If I add this to that, then I can, you know, do this drill. And I think that's what makes coaching so exciting, and coaches that are good so creative. It doesn't matter where you get your information from, as long as you can apply it and you can communicate it to players, you're going to be a great coach. And, you know, I always talk about how I learned to coach, because I'm a self-taught coach, right? Because I just started right from 1987 when I was an assistant coach. I didn't have any formal training. And then in 1989, I'm like 29 years old, and I'm like, boom, I'm the head coach. So now what do I do? And I've evolved as a coach. And I think that I relied mostly on my communication skills and my intuition and my relationships. That's why whenever I do any talks or something, you know, when I go out into the community and do like some mentoring talks, I really think it's important to talk about those soft skills that it takes to be a coach. I think the X's and O's you can learn, but most coaches really rely on what their power play is and what their forecheck is and what their breakout strategy is. And yeah, those are important. The X's and O's are definitely important, important to communicate to your players. But I believe what gets you over that hump is that culture that you build, those relationship skills that you like build with your athletes, how you can read them on the bench, how you manage a bench, how you know when you're going to yell and scream at that kid, or you're going to not yell and scream, you're going to pat him on the. Those are intuitive skills, soft skills that I believe are really important to coaching, and that more coaches need to be versed on.
Well, I mean, I personally, and this is just my view, and I know I'll probably get, crap for it, but that's okay.
Who cares?
I look at it, we're bringing a lot of young women into college coaching, right out of college. We're bringing them right in, right away. The one thing I don't think we're seeing enough is, I don't think we're seeing enough mentoring about that side of the game. The mentoring, it's not just the X's and O's, like you said. It's almost like the business sense of, this is how you have to be as a coach and run a team.
Yeah, and I've actually, I blame the NCAA for this, the NCAA institutions for this, because they don't they don't give you enough training, right? When you think about Title IX and how it's helped the cause of women's sports, it really hasn't done enough from the coaching perspective. Like, it's definitely helped the athletes, and it's definitely elevated the salaries and whatnot. But I believe what's really happened is it's hurt the leadership piece of it in the form of coaching. And here's why. Because now that you have all this elevation in money and salaries, you have the athletic directors now in a see it, be it position. They're going to hire people that look more like them, right? They're going to hire people that they're comfortable with. So we have to flip that on its head now too. And now that we've we got the players in line now. Now the next step, which shouldn't happen, but it does, is now how do we get more women involved? And it shouldn't just be we take a great player and plug them into a coaching position. We need to take the coaches that are out there now, whether they be in D3 or whatever, and then mentor them by putting money behind it. Because the only thing that's going to help is to bring, and I don't want a job because I got enough jobs, but to bring someone like me or an older coach back into the fray and help these women manage that. And I'm going to say one more thing, because I've always been 20 years ahead of the curve. When we first started getting women and women's salaries elevated, I said, wouldn't it be great if you had older men coaches that were retiring, that they could co-coach at the beginning and help elevate that woman to a place where you and I just talked about how to manage the soft skills, how to manage the leadership, how to manage the relationships. And then right now, if we had done it back 20 years ago, we would already have mostly all women coaching. But we couldn't get the administrations on board to think of it from that perspective because of one thing. The male model cares about winning. And I'm not saying you don't care about winning, but you care about growth, development, life skills, how to transition into the real world. And if you can't make a living playing sports, you have to now devote some of your resources to that attitude and mindset. So it's a different way of thinking about it, but I always say, why does it have to be the same? So
right.
Just my
no, listen, I agree.
I've been talking for a long time.
I agree 1,000% on everything you're saying, because it's so true. And, and I used to kid around, to all of my girls lacrosse players. And, I would say, I played professional lacrosse in the indoor and outdoor league, but, I wasn't this elite player. I was that blue collar, grinded out player, not making really any money at all. And so I used to say, you're not going to go to a school and then be a professional women's lacrosse player. Now I say with professional women's lacrosse league, I say, you're not going to be
gonna make money.
Who's going to make money at it right now.
Yeah.
Unless you're a Kylie O'Miller, who can get endorsement deals and stuff like that and supplement it, that's great. But but we need to change that, and we need to influence that more by putting these women in those opportunities where they are being able to get mentored the right way. I'll tell you a great story. We did a conference at Hofstra years back, and I call it the Women's Power Conference. And I brought in Lisa Caputo as our keynote speaker. Lisa was Brown, I think, class of 86, something along those. She was a two-sport athlete, field hockey and lacrosse. And she's had an unbelievable career. She went to Northwestern Journalism School, thought she wanted to be a political writer, got into politics, ended up becoming Hillary Clinton's press secretary when Bill Clinton was in office. And just an amazing woman. And then out of that was offered jobs to come out and start some jobs. Today, she's the Senior Executive Vice President of Travelers. She runs all of marketing for Travelers. But Lisa came in, she was supposed to speak for an hour. She spoke for 2.5 hours to all of the girls in the room about the power of sport and how you can take the life lessons that it teaches you and directly intertwine them into your career, and then how to take your career to a next level by using the things that you learned on the ice, in the rink, on the turf, in the grass, on the court, wherever it is.
That's, it's a natural conversation, but people just can't connect the dots. And you see it all the time. All these companies, they want to hire women athletes, right? I mean, it's actually something that, I've been working on. I was this job and COVID hit, but, it's really something that it's easy to connect the dots, but the athletes need to buy in to that concept. And they're so conditioned to just focus on that one thing sometimes that they can't see themselves outside of sports. And this, in my opinion, this is the NCAA coach's job to do that. And they're not seeing it because the athletic directors focus the coaches only on winning. And when that happens, you do your athletes a disservice. And they will tell you that they don't. But
I say for me, one of the greatest, literally one of the greatest things I ever did was I went through the Positive Coaching Alliance. And I went through that, and it literally changed how I coach, because I was that crazy coach who wanted to win so badly. And what Positive Coaching Alliance taught me was it's okay to win, and it's okay to want to win, and it's okay to teach kids to win. However, teaching life lessons along the way is so much more important.
Yeah, I mean, even just building our team right now out at Toronto, I'm finding myself in a situation where I'm just, even talking about salary caps and salaries, you just have to be transparent because no one's making $1 million here, right? So we need to have conversations about what money means. Like, is money a big factor in your decision to come to Toronto? And I always tell people, if your decision to come to Toronto and play hockey is about money and how much money you're going to make, hang up the phone right now. Because it needs to be a mission-driven mindset that we are doing. It needs to be about education, empowerment, and inclusion. Those are the 3 core values of what we're building in Toronto. And it needs to be a sustainability model for women's sports. Because other than that, you're just buying into that model that we all don't like, which is all about winning, all about what scholarship, all about how much money. And as well as I do, you're a Brown guy. We didn't win a lot of games sometimes at Brown, but it really was about, we got the Brown education, and what do we do with that to help the planet?
You produced some amazing players, a bunch of Olympians as well. Who are some of the favorite players that you coached?
Oh God, I mean, so many. Like Allie Brewer, right off the bat is who comes to mind, because she was a Kazmaier Award winner, and she never actually even, I don't think, played for Team USA or the Olympic team. We had Tara Munsey, we had Katie King. Becky
Oh my God,
Brewer.
Tara Munsey. I remember Tara. I got to meet Tara personally. And one of my favorite things I heard about Tara was she was the captain of the boys high school team and MVP with Vermont.
No, New Hampshire, and Player of the Year. And Player of the Year.
Player of the Year as a girl in the boys high school team.
Yeah, she was just ridiculous. And, without a career-ending injury, like she would have been like a 3 or 4-time Olympian minimum. She's a PA now, physician's assistant. So she's pretty high-powered in the medical field. Becky Keller, who is, I think, a 5-time Olympian out of Canada. Chichi Sakuma, you remember her? She was first ever Japanese Olympian. I mean, just phenomenal humans. And just players like even Nicole Stock, who, was one of the all-time leading goalies at Brown, who never got a sniff at the national team for whatever reason. These are ridiculously talented women. And then you look at Haley Moore now, who's the president of the Brown, the Boston Pride. So, there's just a lot of great players that we had that went through it. And it really wasn't about only being a great Olympian. It was about being a great person and contributing to Brown
as the athlete, but then post Brown, what are they doing? And they're just phenomenal humans. So I can't say
Yeah,
enough
it's
about
amazing. I mean, I just had George Pine on, George Pine the other
Yep.
day, was president of IMG. He now runs Bruin Sports Ventures,
Right.
got to get the Bruin name in there. It's phenomenal. Browns is definitely a special place. And I don't know if you knew this or not, but as part of my financial aid package, I had to have a student job all 4 years. So freshman year, I was in the kitchen, which was the worst.
In the
And
ratty.
not that I care in the ratty. I was in the ratty. That's what the dining hall is called at Brown, and not because we had rats either. But then eventually my student job for my last 2 years, I was a sports announcer, and I did men's ice hockey. So I was the live in-game announcer for men's ice hockey, women's gymnastics, men's soccer. I was the backup on basketball, but boy, did I have a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah, Mike Rubin does it still to this day. He was an announcer back then. Yeah.
Mike does an unbelievable job. He's a great homer. Him
and his brother too. Eric does it too. So they're great. I actually just ran into him and Cassie Turner because there's a couple of kids in the league right now. Kara, I remember you know Kara Morey, who Sean Morey's wife. Kara Gardner played for me at Brown. She's the head coach at Princeton. And funny thing about Kara, besides for being one of the Team Canada coaches, they knocked off undefeated Cornell, my alma mater, in the ECAC championships recently. So, I couldn't lose in that game, my alma mater or my Brown player. Either one we were going to win.
I'll tell you, Brown, the main auditorium was a lot of fun. It was we talk about being a little bit of a homer. I remember at the time, John Perry was the athletic director, and Brown was playing Harvard in men's ice hockey. Harvard was #1 in the country, and I was announcing the game. And our goalie, Chris Harvey, I think he had 61 saves in the game. And I was going ballistic every time he made a save, and I was screaming on the loudspeaker, Harvey with the save, kick save and a beauty, and, doing all my thing. And I get a phone call from John Perry. He said, the Harvard athletic director is saying that you're not being fair in the in-game announcements, and you're not announcing any of the Harvard goalie saves.
Oh,
so I'm like, are you kidding me? Is that really my job? And he's like, you have to announce a save. So anytime the Harvard goalie would make a save, I would say, saved by the Harvard goalie. That's all I would say. They got mad at me, but that's okay.
That's okay. Hey, we're asking for forgiveness, not permission, right?
Exactly. Well, listen, I want to get to our last questions. So one of the last questions I have for you, and it's a new question that we just added, is, we're going through this crazy time with COVID-19 and anything. What's your silver lining in all of this?
My silver lining is that I'm a very take care of the planet, take care of the world person. I think the silver lining is the world needed a little bit of a break to the checking of the carbon, situation here, right? So a little bit of a greener world. But the other silver lining for me is just slowing it down and appreciating things. And I can only hope, and I'm not optimistic this is going to happen, that we now have a different way of operating. I think the capitalistic economy is just going to kick us back up. But I do hope that we come up with more creative solutions to make a greener world, make us stop and smell the roses a little more. Because I think, especially as Americans, I can't speak for the rest of the world, we just go 24/7. From a sports perspective, I think women's sports are going to be the model these days. You look at the comp crowd, not a lot of people there. We're doing more things online. We're doing more things that, involve the audiences being smaller. So hopefully we'll be the model. But there's a lot of good that can come out of this. And lastly, the last thing that came out of COVID was I wasn't going to even think about doing hockey. This kind of came to me as a result of our startup kind of going in a different direction. So, I think we just need to see the silver lining. But thanks.
Well, I just posted something on my personal Facebook page today. It's actually a dad reading in the future reading a story to his children about how everything was changed, and basically it takes something away from the comment, hindsight is 2020. Well, here we are in 2020, and it's will we have the hindsight in 2020 to look back and say this was a great reset?
Yeah,
So
I hope
who
so.
knows? So now the next question I have for you is a question from our prior guest, George Pine. So George Pine, founder, CEO of Bruin Sports, former president of IMG, former COO of NASCAR. And his son has a shot at competing for the starting quarterback job this year at Notre Dame.
Wow.
He wanted to ask of you, what are the things that you are looking for in a player, when the three most important characteristics when you're either recruiting them or, in this case, maybe drafting them for your team? What are the three most important characteristics you look for?
Selflessness, humility, and mission driven. And especially those things are important, especially in the pro space, because selflessness means that you're going to give up whatever it takes to get to the goal line, to score that goal or to win that championship. And mission driven is exactly what we've been talking about this whole time, is how do we get women's sports on the next page. So I think that those three things are really truly important to players on my team, because, and humility of course is important, because you want people that are, just not all about themselves, because, it's so easy. There's no I in team and all those things. But it really does mean something. You need to be humble, because especially if you're a top player, like, you want to bring people into your fold. You don't want to repel them. And I think a humble top player is really, that can be contagious.
We had Pat LaFontaine on the show this past week, and you talk about someone who's humble. What an amazing person. And one of the things I said to Pat, though, was in all my, working with the NHL, working with the New York Islanders, consulting with them, it's been amazing that the players that I've worked with, it's amazing their humility. Clark Gillies, Bobby Nystrom, Mike Bossy, Bill Guerin, Pat LaFontaine, just amazing, really good people. And the one thing I love about hockey too, and especially, and I wish we would have it in lacrosse, the hockey assist.
Yeah.
The assist to the assist.
Yes.
A player is usually doing the dirty work, getting the puck out of the corner.
100%. Making that pass, the defender out of the zone, that gives it to the forward, that then shoots the puck and the other person puts it in. Without that defender passing that great pass on the dot, like bam, transitioning down that ice, you don't see that. And, those defenders, especially in hockey, are so important to starting the play. And that gets lost without that assist to the assist. So.
Well, as a coach, that's one of the first things I do on the lacrosse field is I don't go nuts when someone scores a goal. The first thing I do is I'll either go to the goalie or the defender and go, that started with you.
Exactly. No, and that resonates with the kids. So.
Absolutely. It's awesome. So now our next guest is Janine Tucker. She's the head coach of Johns Hopkins women's lacrosse. Janine's just one of the best in the sport. She's just a great human being. What is your question that we should ask of Janine?
If it was to Janine, I would say, what are you doing as a college coach to make sure that your players are positioned in life to take the next step?
Oh my God. If there's anyone that's literally suited to do this, it's Janine.
I figured I'd serve her up a layup question, seeing that she was one of our coaches in the UWLX initially.
She's unbelievable. She really is. Now, our last question, and this is one of my favorite ones, is because it's really what the Elevate Academy is about. It's about taking my experiences that I've had, meeting great people, leaders, coaches, athletes, and being able to take that and bring that back down to the student athletes and the parents and coaches to help every one of us elevate our games, be better, elevate our lives, elevate our minds, all these things. So it comes down to this. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received, and who did you receive it from?
Wow, that's a tough one. I think the best, and I don't even know if it was a piece of advice more than it was just how my family treated me as someone that was not normal. I wasn't cut from the same cloth like that a normal girl was. And they just let me do what I wanted to do. Like I wanted to wear my hair short. They let me wear my hair short. I wanted to be rough and tumble, throwing, baseballs. They bought me a baseball glove. They never put me into that traditional gender norm that allowed me to have the confidence to be who I am today. So it really was how my family reacted to who I was as a person that gave me the confidence to be who I am today. So for all the parents out there, just let your kids be themselves and it all works out.
And don't compare them to other kids.
Ever. Like even with our own family, I have 6 kids and, we never said you have to go to Ivy League schools or you have to do this. It was all like, you do what's right for you and you drive your bus because, you can't push the kids to do anything they don't want to do. You want them to walk to the light. You don't want to pull them into the light. So, I think that from a young age, I was taught to be myself and to do what's right for me. So I think all parents can take a lesson from my parents and my grandparents.
Well, I got to tell you, Digit, you've always been a good friend. I love speaking to you whenever we have the chance to speak. You're just a bright light. You're a mentor to so many women, a great coach, and I'm so excited to see what you're going to do in this new role with Toronto. Me
too. We're going to build a championship team, baby. We're going to bring that cup to Toronto. Let's do it.
I love it.
Thanks for having me. Pleasure. It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
You're so awesome. Listen, everyone, have a great weekend. Stay safe, be smart out there, and keep elevating every day that you can. Elevate yourself and elevate others. That's what it's all about. Talk to you guys soon. We'll see you on Monday with our next guest, Janine Tucker. Thanks again, Digit. You're the best.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.